They lied, flat out, and they're still lying, while people, real people, are getting blown to bits. But here's the kicker. They expect you to sit down, shut up, and smile while it happens. Nah, mate. Not here. Not on this channel. You ever notice how quick some folks are to cry misinformation? But when it comes to Israel flattening Gaza, suddenly the facts are too complex? Spare me. It's not complex. It's cowardice wrapped in PR spin with a flag stuck on top for good measure. And now the Israeli president reckons he's frustrated with Anthony Albanese. Good. He should be. Because for once, Australia's PM isn't falling in line like some obedient little sidekick. Herzog wants Albo to come over, sip tea in a bunker, and maybe pose for a photo op in front of a tank. All while pretending that this isn't a genocide unfolding in real time. But let's call it for what it is. This isn't about defense. It's a slow, systematic demolition job. And they're upset because someone dared to raise their voice. Too bad. Before we dive headfirst into this Australia-Israel-Gaza disaster, where Albanese actually grows a spine, Israel throws a diplomatic tantrum, and Sky News spins faster than a pokey machine on pension day, smash that like button like you're tearing up an Elbit Systems contract. Subscribe if you're sick of the lies, the war crimes, and the media cover-ups. And grab the "Is this the better Australia you promised" tea from the description below. Wear it to Parliament, protests, or your next awkward family dinner. Now look, I'm no fanboy of Albo. He's fumbled enough stuff back home to make any tradie spit his beer. But when he called Israel's blockade outrageous, he wasn't wrong. People are starving. Kids are dying. And Israel's choking off aid while playing the victim card in every interview. That's not defense. That's punishment. And when Albo said it, suddenly he's poorly informed? Mate, the only ones poorly informed are the ones still watching Sky News thinking they're getting the whole story. Chris Kenny flew all the way to Israel just to act like a mouthpiece. Standing near the Syrian border like he's reporting from an action movie. This is a low point for Australia-Israel relations, he says, like it's some big tragedy. Nah, mate. The tragedy is what's happening to innocent Palestinians while journos like him sell us crocodile tears and half-truths. Kenny reckons the criticism is unfair, that Aussies don't understand what Israel's facing. Maybe. But what about what Gaza's facing? Whole families wiped out, hospitals bombed, journalists targeted, and we're meant to say nothing? And don't get me started on that ABC correction. You hear this? They ran with a claim that 14,000 babies were going to die in 48 hours, didn't fact-check it, didn't clarify, just chucked it out there like throwing petrol on a fire. And when it turned out, the stat was twisted from a worst-case scenario over a year. They quietly corrected it a week later. A week. That's not journalism. That's propaganda by omission. Imagine being a parent in Gaza, clinging to your starving child, while the media in Australia argues over press releases. It's sick. And here's the spicy bit they don't want you to hear. The relationship between Australia and Israel isn't about mateship. It's about compliance. You say what they want. They clap for you. You question them. Suddenly you're anti-Semitic or uninformed. That's the game. And Sky News is playing it like a bloody fiddle, crying betrayal like we owe Israel our silence. Nah, mate, respect goes both ways. And right now, Israel's torching what little goodwill is left. You want to know what betrayal really looks like? It's Aussie pollies and pundits who talk about human rights in Ukraine, but go quiet when kids are pulled from rubble in Rafah. It's pretending to care about women's safety until those women are Palestinian. It's our tax dollars funding arms deals while our headlines focus on Albanese's tone. The double standards are sickening, and they think we won't notice because they bury it under politics. But we're not blind. We're not stupid. We see the tanks, the bombs, the checkpoints. We see how journalists get silenced, how aid workers get shot, how whole city blocks disappear overnight. We see the occupation for what it is, a brutal, dehumanizing campaign that's gone on for decades, and no amount of media spin is going to pretty that up. You've got folks out here pretending like Israel's the underdog. Are you kidding? Backed by the US, armed to the teeth, endless funding, and still playing the victim while they drop white phosphorus on civilians. And anyone who calls it out gets painted as a radical. Well, if speaking the truth makes you a radical, then sign me up. Because silence is complicity, and I refuse to be part of that club. Now, before anyone clutches their pearls, let's be real clear. Calling out Israel's government isn't anti-Semitic. It's called holding power accountable. You can support Jewish people and still call out war crimes. Just like you can support Aussies without backing every dumb move the government makes. But they blur that line on purpose, because if you're too scared to speak, they win. And they're counting on you being too distracted to care. That's why Sky News spends more time on Meghan Markle than on kids dying in Gaza. That's why they freak out over university protests instead of the actual war crimes. Because distraction is the oldest trick in the book. Keep the people arguing about flags and pronouns while the bombs keep falling. But not here. Not on this channel. We see through the fog. The real kicker. They're demanding that Albanese fly to Israel for a learning experience. You reckon they'll show him the bombed-out schools, the dead medics, the families torn apart at checkpoints? Or will it be a carefully curated tour, all smiles and briefings, just enough to sell the next spin back home? Wake up. That's not diplomacy. That's damage control. And the timing couldn't be more cooked. While journalists and politicians rub shoulders in Jerusalem, kids in Gaza are drinking contaminated water. Hospitals are running out of fuel. Mothers are burying their children in makeshift graves. But sure, let's talk about how frustrated the Israeli president is. Tell me how that's the story. Here's what they're really mad about. The world's waking up. The narrative's cracking. People are seeing the footage, the maps, the numbers. They're listening to survivors. And suddenly, support for Israel's blank check war is starting to fade. Even in Australia. Even with all the media spin, the tide's shifting. That's what scares them. Not Albanese's words. The fact that people are finally asking questions. And they should be scared. Because when the truth gets out, the lies fall apart. When people realize that humanitarian aid is being blocked, that entire families are getting wiped out with US-made bombs, that a so-called war on terror is just a cover for ethnic cleansing, they stop playing along. They start resisting. And resistance terrifies those who profit off silence. But here's where it gets dark. Real dark. Some of the very companies profiting off this bloodshed are the same ones funding Australian political campaigns. Yeah, you heard that right. Arms manufacturers, surveillance tech companies, private contractors, all with a hand in what's happening in Gaza. And they've got lobbyists crawling through Canberra like cockroaches in a kebab shop. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's public record. So when you see pollies dragging their feet on condemning Israel, ask yourself, who's lining their pockets? Who's writing those scripts behind closed doors? Because it ain't just about morals anymore. It's about money. And if you follow the money, you start to see the whole crooked puzzle. And then there's the media. Sweet mercy. The media. Pushing the same tired script like it's gospel. Israel has a right to defend itself. Rinse and repeat. No context, no history, no mention of occupation, of apartheid, of stolen land. Just a single narrative. Spoon-fed to the public until they believe it's the only truth. But it's not truth. It's theatre. And the curtain's starting to slip. You've got journalists acting like activists for a foreign state and calling it reporting. You've got newsrooms too scared to use the word genocide, even while mass graves are being dug in Gaza. And you've got public broadcasters parroting defense ministry lines like they're auditioning for a job in Tel Aviv. That's not journalism, that's complicity. But here's the silver lining, if you can call it that. People are waking up. Aussies aren't stupid. We know when we're being played. And more of us are calling it like it is. Protests are getting bigger. Voices are getting louder. And no matter how hard they try to shut us up, the truth is getting out. So the question now is, what side of history do you want to be on? The side that stayed silent while innocent lives were crushed? Or the side that spoke up, even when it was uncomfortable? Because trust me, History remembers. It always does. And if you're watching this right now thinking, bloody hell, this is heavy, good. It should be. Because we're not just talking politics. We're talking about lives, about dignity, about justice. And those things don't come easy. They're fought for. And right now, it's time to fight with truth, with courage, and with the knowledge that no government, not Israel's, not ours, gets a free pass when children are dying on their watch. Stay right there, because what I'm about to show you next will blow this wide open and expose the uncomfortable links between Australia's foreign policy, the weapons industry, and the silencing of dissent. You don't want to miss it. Let's pick up where we left off. The cozy relationship between Australia's foreign policy and the weapons industry. If you're not angry yet, you're either not paying attention or you're getting a cut of the contracts. Because what I'm about to tell you isn't some shadowy conspiracy. It's all out in the open. And it stinks worse than bin juice on a 40-degree day. You've got Aussie defense companies cashing in on tech that ends up in occupied Palestine. Surveillance drones, facial recognition systems, border monitoring tools, all tested on real people under real occupation. And where do they trial this gear? Not in labs. On the streets of Gaza and the West Bank, the tech gets battle tested on Palestinians before it hits the market. Think about that for a second. Weapons-grade software tested on civilian populations, and then marketed globally as combat-proven. That's the pitch. That's the selling point. That's what makes it valuable. And Aussie companies are in on it. Elbit Systems, one of Israel's biggest defense tech firms, operates in Australia. And despite protests, despite human rights reports, despite everything we know, they're still getting government contracts. Our tax dollars are funding companies that build weapons and surveillance tools used in occupied territories. And then the government turns around and tells us they support peace. Get stuffed. You think this is accidental? You reckon it's just bad policy? Nah. This is strategic. It's about profit. It's about keeping quiet while money flows into the pockets of politicians and arms dealers. And it's why you'll rarely see a serious debate in Parliament about what's really happening in Palestine. Because the minute you start asking questions, you follow the trail to people with deep pockets and deeper connections. Let's break it down. Australia has abstained or voted against multiple UN resolutions that aim to hold Israel accountable. Resolutions calling for ceasefires, condemning settlement expansion, demanding access to humanitarian aid. Over and over, Australia either looks the other way or outright backs Israel. Why? Because it's not about morals, it's about alliances, about trade, about military cooperation. You've got Aussie pollies flying out to Israel for fact-finding missions sponsored by pro-Israel lobby groups, trips where they get wined and dined, given carefully curated tours, then come home with talking points that could have been drafted by the IDF. That's not diplomacy, that's influence peddling, and it's working. Meanwhile, on the streets of Sydney and Melbourne, protesters are getting hounded by cops for waving Palestinian flags. Students are being disciplined for speaking out. Media figures lose jobs for saying the word genocide. What kind of democracy are we living in when telling the truth gets you punished? And yet these same politicians get on TV and lecture us about freedom, about values, about the rules-based order. What bloody rules? The rules that say some lives matter more than others? That say war crimes are fine as long as the West approves? Pull the other one, it plays jingle bells. They say Israel has the right to defend itself. All right, but what about Palestinians? Do they have the right to exist? Because every time they resist, even peacefully, they're labelled terrorists. They get shot at protests. Their homes get demolished. Their olive groves get torched. Their journalists get murdered. And if you so much as mention it, you're accused of anti-Semitism. Let's be very clear. Criticizing Israel's government, especially under someone like Netanyahu, is not anti-Semitism. It's accountability. You can't hide behind history forever. The Holocaust was one of the worst atrocities in human history. And that makes it even more important that we speak out when other atrocities happen. Saying never again should mean never again for anyone, not just one group. But the way they twist it, the way they conflate criticism of Israeli policy with hate, is calculated. It's meant to shut people up, to scare them into silence. And it works too, because no one wants to be called a bigot. No one wants to lose their job or be smeared in the press. So people stay quiet, even when their guts are screaming that what they're seeing is wrong. But you know what? Silence doesn't protect you. It just makes you complicit. And the people doing the killing, the bombing, the starving, the occupying, they count on that silence. It's their favorite weapon, more powerful than drones, more deadly than tanks. Your silence is their shield. So let's break that silence. Let's drag every dirty secret into the daylight. Like how Australia exports parts used in Israeli weapons systems. Like how our ports are used to ship gear destined for occupied territories. Like how our universities partner with defense companies who directly support apartheid. Yeah, I said it. Apartheid. You don't need to sugarcoat it. That's what it is. Two systems of law, two sets of rights, one for Israelis, one for Palestinians. And if that word makes you uncomfortable, good. It should. And let's not pretend this is some far-off issue. This is happening with your taxes, with your votes, with your silence. And the media here? They're not just failing to report it. They're actively suppressing it. Have you seen the coverage? It's all Israel retaliates. Never Israel bombs refugee camp. It's clashes erupt, not heavily armed troops shot unarmed civilians. The language is designed to soften the horror, to make it palatable, to make it feel distant. But it's not distant, it's real, it's brutal, and it's happening now. And let's talk about who's doing the fighting. Because it's not just governments, it's young Aussies. It's school kids, university students, community leaders, journalists, artists, all standing up, speaking out, marching in the streets, and they're getting smeared for it, called radicals, extremists, mobs. But they're the conscience of this country. They're the ones holding the line when the institutions fail. You know who's not holding the line? The spineless opportunists who wrap themselves in the flag and pretend to care about both sides while children are pulled from rubble. The ones who say violence on both sides as if that erases the 75-year power imbalance, as if occupied people defending themselves is somehow equivalent to a nuclear-armed state flattening apartment blocks. And then you've got folks who say, it's complicated. No, it's not. What's complicated about bombs dropping on hospitals? About soldiers raiding homes in the middle of the night? About denying food and water to millions of people? It's not complicated, it's cruel. And people pretending otherwise are either ignorant or lying. Look, none of this is about hating anyone. It's about justice. It's about human rights. It's about basic decency. And if you're still defending Israel's actions after all the footage, all the testimony, all the evidence, then you're choosing to look away. You're choosing comfort over conscience. And history will remember you for it. So what now? What do? First, we keep speaking. Loudly, consistently, unapologetically. We challenge the narratives. We call out the lies. We amplify the truth. And we support those on the ground. The medics, the journalists, the aid workers, who are risking everything to expose what's really happening. We also demand more from our leaders. No more fence sitting. No more cowardly statements. We want action. We want sanctions on the Israeli government. We want an end to military cooperation. We want full accountability for war crimes. And we want it now. And if they won't act, if the Albanese government continues to play both sides, then they don't deserve our votes. Full stop. Because complicity isn't leadership, it's cowardice, and we need leaders with spine. We also need to keep supporting Palestinian voices. They've been dehumanized for decades, painted as threats, as terrorists, as statistics, but they're people, just like you, families, kids, teachers, artists, people with dreams and hopes, living under constant threat. Listen to them, share their stories, believe their pain. And lastly, we keep showing up. To the protests, to the petitions, to the conversations, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Because this fight isn't just about Palestine. It's about what kind of world we want to live in. A world where might makes right, or a world where justice means something? That choice is ours. Every single day. So if this hit you hard, if you felt that gut punch of truth, don't just nod and scroll on. Do something. Share this. Talk to your mates. Call your MP. Join a protest. Boycott the companies complicit. Because silence is easy, but silence is betrayal. And if anyone tries to shame you for speaking up, remind them that history's greatest atrocities were enabled by good people doing nothing. Not today, not anymore. The truth's out, the mask is off, and there's no going back. Free Palestine. Now and always. If you've made it this far, you're not just a viewer, you're part of something bigger. And together, we will change this. No justice, no peace. See you in the next one. And don't forget to slap that like button like it just voted to fund another airstrike. Oi, if this fired you up, grab the "Is this the better Australia you promised" tee. Wear it to a protest, the Parliament steps, or while yelling at the telly as the truth gets buried. Stay loud, stay defiant, and never stop calling out the liars, warmongers and cowards hiding behind a flag. Catch you on the front lines, legend.